I'll try to be as brief as possible, and stick to the relevant events that are giving me this feeling. But the latest event happened last night, and I didn't get much sleep. So, my apologies if I ramble or am unclear. My wife and I recently purchased our first home after the birth of our daughter. Everything was as you would expect the first few months. Painting, decorating, renovating. Basking in our newfound slice of the American dream. You get the idea. Unusual things started happening several months ago. One day, I was getting home after work. I passed by a strange truck 2 or 3 houses down from ours. I say strange for a few reasons. We know literally everyone in our small neighborhood, and I'd never seen this truck or person before. There's no reason for through traffic to come down our street, and the truck was driving very slowly. I mean, put it in drive, but don't press on the gas slowly. As I pulled in the driveway, the truck flipped a U-turn and came back towards my house. Getting out of my car, the truck crawled by, and the driver stared daggers at me as he passed, then sped off. I don't like to judge based on appearances, and I like to think that I don't scare easily. But something about this guy's eyes gave me a bad feeling. Obviously, this was weird. I mentioned what happened to my wife, telling her we should be more mindful about security. When I told her the type of truck, my wife said, "That same truck drove by, and the guy stared at me when I got home this afternoon. I thought he was just being creepy and checking me out." I tried to tease her a bit to lighten the mood, calling her cocky for assuming any guy driving by was checking her out. I didn't want to freak her out, but I was definitely freaked out. We saw the truck a few more times over the next couple of weeks, either driving by slowly or parked down the block and facing our yard. But one day the truck stopped driving by, and we haven't seen it since. I sort of dismissed the whole thing as me being paranoid. Then, other things started happening. In the past month or so, my wife and I have been hearing tapping on the windows at the front of our house at night. It's happened 2 or 3 times to each of us separately, always around 10 or 11 p.m., and always a soft but distinct tap, tap, tap. It sounds like knocking with a single knuckle on the part of a metal screen door, if that makes sense. The first time that my wife and I heard tapping together was last weekend. We were in the front room playing with our daughter around 9:30, just about to settle her down for bed. Our front room has a large, almost floor-to-ceiling window running the length of the wall next to the front door, which faces the street. We were all sitting on the floor with our backs to the window, reading our daughter a book, when we heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Now, our house is older. Creaks and cracks aren't uncommon. But this sound was so distinctly intentional that my wife and I immediately looked at each other and bolted up out of the room. I had my wife and daughter lock themselves in a back room while I turned on all the lights and did a sweep around the outside of the house. Of course, I didn't see anything, and was ready to dismiss the whole thing as more paranoia over something that probably had an innocent explanation. Until last night. Around 9:45 p.m., we heard our daughter making noise over the baby monitor. I waited a few minutes to see if she would settle down, but when it became clear she wouldn't, I got up to go put her back to sleep. The layout of the room is important to visualize this next part. This room is on the side of our house, but the exterior wall juts out a bit in an L shape, and the corner of this L is made up of windows. If you're standing in the door to the room, you're directly across from these windows in one corner, and there's a rocking chair in the other corner pointed towards the front of the house. One window faces the street, and the other faces our neighbor's house. A garden bed planted with small shrubs wraps around the outside of the house directly underneath. I was sitting in the chair getting my daughter settled down. I had a lamp on so the room was softly lit. Once she fell asleep, I stood up to put her in her crib when something caught my eye. There was a figure, standing about a foot away from the window, in the bare space between the shrubs and the outside of the house. This figure was staring at us. I didn't look long enough to see anything more than what appeared to be a man in a light gray hoodie, standing a few feet away on the other side of the glass. Sprinting from the room, I brought my daughter back to my wife and I's bedroom, leaving her there while telling my understandably confused wife to lock the door. After turning off all the lights inside the house and turning on all the lights outside, I began moving from room to room, peering out all the windows into the darkness. I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. Whoever it was must have taken off after seeing me notice them and made a quick exit. Obviously, I had some trouble sleeping after this. I spent hours checking security cameras and going from room to room looking out the windows into the night, hoping, but also not hoping, that I would see anything that could explain what happened. This morning, I went outside to the spot where the figure would have been standing. I hoped maybe there was a plant or something that I mistook for a person. When I got to the spot, I realized the figure had to be standing exactly in a bare patch of ground about 2 feet in diameter, directly in front of that window. Part of me is still hoping that I'm being paranoid. The mind can play tricks on you in the dark, seeing things that aren't actually there, especially when you're a sleep-deprived new parent. But with everything that's been happening, I can't shake the feeling that there was actually someone out there last night, watching us. Please God, let me be wrong. Update. As for the update, nothing happened last night. I expected that would be the case for a couple reasons. First, so far all of these events have taken place a week or two apart. The tapping this weekend and seeing the figure 2 nights ago were the closest in time of any of them. Second, this person absolutely realized that I saw them, so I wouldn't expect them to be so bold as to come back the very next night. I still stayed up and kept an eye out though. To address some of the common questions, we own several guns. I'm pretty well versed in gun safety and a pretty good shot. Since we have a young child, I've kept all my weapons locked away, but after this past week, I've made sure to find places to store guns that are out of her reach but within my reach for quick access. There are blinds, curtains, and solar screens on all of our windows. The window I mentioned earlier is dark, and the curtains were drawn over it that night. They're those semi-see-through white ones, so I didn't notice the blinds weren't drawn. All windows are checked and covered as soon as I get home from now on. All exterior doors are deadbolted and the frames are reinforced. These were security measures put in by the previous owners that I thought were unnecessary, but I'm now grateful for. Anybody tries kicking their way in, the door will hold long enough for me to get ready for them. I have purchased and installed additional exterior cameras with motion-activated lights. I am looking into buying additional motion-activated floodlights for the more remote corners of our property. Lots of people have mentioned getting a dog. While I do love dogs, we have a pretty full house animal-wise right now, and I wouldn't feel good about taking in another animal that I wasn't sure we could give sufficient attention to. Our neighbors have 2 alert dogs that are out all night, and they've been barking more often after dark the past few weeks, which is just another reason we've been on edge. As for who this person might be, I don't think it's related to the previous owners. They were a married couple with no children who lived there for 30 years. The husband passed away, and the wife needed to downsize, which is why she sold the house. Maybe it's someone who lost out on the bid for the place, but there was so much time between us buying the house and all this starting that it just seems unlikely. Several people made the note that I was a lawyer and asked if it could be related to that. My practice is focused on probate and estate planning, and the vast majority of my cases don't involve any contentious issues or drama. Obviously, there have been some cases that get a bit heated, but I can't think of anyone that would want to come after me specifically based on any of them. I took some pictures of the place where the person would have been standing, and the view they would have had inside the house. It got me spooked all over again. If I have another update post in the future, I'll consider including those photos. Any advice you guys have on the situation would be greatly appreciated. As you can tell, I'm incredibly worried about the safety of my family,